She's just easier to work with. That sentence didn't hit me all at once. It landed slowly, like a drop of ice water slipping down my spine, chilling everything it touched. Across the table, Nathan Cho, head of operations at Vanguard Creative Systems, sat with that polished HR smile, the kind that had been practiced more than meant. Outside, Austin's spring sun glinted off the glass-paneled office towers. But inside that conference room, it might as well have been winter. I mean, Ellis, no one is questioning your results, Nathan continued, his voice syrupy, patronizing. Your numbers are excellent, stellar, even. But Tina brings a different energy to the team. She's upbeat. She makes people feel good. There's value in that. I stared at him, not blinking. Tina? The same Tina who once burst into tears over a delayed sprint review? The one who left me scrambling at 11 p.m. to fix her botched analytics report for the client demo? 6 years ago, I left my consulting job to join Vanguard. Believing in their promise of building innovation with integrity, I was the first woman over 40 hired into strategy. I designed their onboarding systems, rebuilt a product pipeline that had bled millions, and personally salvaged 3 major accounts they'd nearly lost. But apparently, that wasn't what made you team lead. Tina had been on the verge of getting fired when I stepped in to mentor her. I stayed late, coached her through platform logic she barely understood, shielded her from Nathan's frustration when she missed yet another deadline. I even rewrote her client comms once because she forgot to spell check. And now she was getting my promotion? Of course. We'll continue to value your contributions. Nathan added gently, we're just looking to shift team dynamics in a more collaborative direction. Then he reached for a folder and flipped through it like he was reading off a lunch menu. Also, one last thing. We've adjusted compensation bands company-wide. Your base salary is being realigned to reflect the new team structure. My heart didn't just drop. It fell through the floor. No raise, no promotion, a pay cut, all wrapped in language too polished to scream. I forced a small nod, said nothing. Instead, I opened my portfolio and slid a sealed white envelope across the table. Thanks for the clarity, Nathan, I said softly. Here's mine. She just brings a better energy to the room, Nathan had said. That was his follow-up. Like I hadn't already heard enough. People feel more at ease around Tina. She's bubbly. She makes the space lighter. I sat there, fingers loosely clasped in my lap, nodding like I agreed, like I understood. But inside, something cold and slow was moving through me. Not anger, not yet. Just that low, tight ache of being uninvited from a story I helped write. Tina had better energy. I'd been the one staying in the office until midnight when she forgot to check the Q4 report line items. The one answering last-minute client pings on Sundays while she was off posting mimosa selfies with the caption, # work-life balance. The only lightness I brought to the team was the kind that came from lifting them over deadlines they couldn't carry. That afternoon, I walked past the break room and saw them. Tina, laughing with 2 of the junior associates, Nathan pouring himself a 3rd cup of artisan roast. Someone played lo-fi beats from their phone speaker, loud enough to blur the usual undercurrent of pressure. The room pulsed with a kind of curated calm. No one looked up. Back at my desk, I unlocked my screen. Notifications flickered in the corner. Slack, email, calendar. I scanned the messages without really reading, until one ping stopped me cold. Strategy sync. Reminder, 3 p.m. Huddle on next phase rollout. Underneath, the attendees listed. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't invited. The system being discussed? My idea, my structure, my process. Months ago. I'd presented the outline, had even built the prototype workflow in Trello during a quiet weekend, hoping it would smooth the handoffs between product and sales. I reread the thread again. Still not there. No Ellis. No reference. No trace. It hit harder than the skipped raise or the stolen promotion. This wasn't about recognition anymore. It was about erasure. I wasn't just being pushed aside. I was being peeled out of the frame. Quietly, efficiently, like I'd never belonged in it to begin with. I sat still for a long moment. The sun shifted behind me, casting long shadows across my desk. The world outside kept spinning. Emails sent, meetings held, coffee poured. But in the quiet, I saw the truth. This place had already moved on from me. They were telling a new story now, and they'd chosen a different heroine. But that was the mistake. Because I wasn't done. They may have stopped seeing me, but soon, they'd have no choice but to remember. I left the conference room with steady steps and an envelope still in my hand. He hadn't asked about it. Too busy justifying Tina's promotion. Too confident I'd stay anyway. Back at my desk, I placed the envelope on the corner and stared at it for a moment. Crisp, white, silent. It wasn't a resignation letter. It was a declaration. Not of war, not of anger, but of freedom. I waited until the floor quieted. Then, at exactly 5:58 p.m., 2 minutes before the end of office hours, I walked back to Nathan's office and placed the envelope on his desk without a word. He blinked. "Ellis, what's this?" "You'll want to read both pages," I said quietly. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I simply returned to my desk and shut off my monitor. And for the first time in years, I exhaled. My screensaver flickered on, an old photo I took from my 10th floor balcony. Colorado River, late autumn. That view had kept me sane. It was where this all started. 3 years ago, after yet another meeting where my work had been reworded and repackaged under someone else's name. I came home feeling like a ghost, a person who worked, contributed, built, yet somehow remained invisible. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and opened a blank IDE window, not for work, for me. I began to build the thing I kept hoping someone else would create, a dynamic, adaptable performance system that actually reflected how modern teams worked. It analyzed not just output, but behavior, interdependence, bottlenecks, burnout patterns. It could project team trajectory, not just report on failure after it happened. Weekends, late nights, long flights. I wrote piece by piece. In silence, no one at Vanguard knew. I didn't need them to. Last fall, the patent cleared. Q2, it hit profitability. This wasn't a resignation. This was rollout. As I zipped my bag, a Slack ping appeared. Liam, one of the few junior analysts who still asked questions with curiosity. Not ego. Heard you're leaving. Just wanted to say thank you. You're the reason I even applied here. You made it make sense. I won't forget what you taught me. My eyes lingered on the screen. Thank you. Liam, keep building and never wait for permission to be great. Then I closed the app, shut my laptop, and stood. Some people leave quietly, some leave broken, and some leave because they were never meant to stay in small rooms. By the end of my notice week, Tina had claimed my chair like it was a throne. She slid into my old responsibilities with a self-satisfied smile, latte always in hand, giving overcompensated pep talks and calling last-minute huddles like she was hosting a game show, and management ate it up. Her optimism was seen as initiative, her shallow confidence mistaken for leadership. But beneath the surface, the cracks were already forming. 3 days after I handed in my resignation, Tina pinged me on Slack. Hey, quick cue, where do I find the routing logic for the CRM triggers? Can't seem to find the main flow. I stared at the message, blinking slowly. That logic wasn't tucked away. It was central. It was everything. I'd spent months building it, automating pipelines, forecasting client engagement trends before they dipped. It was the spine of the entire client operations module. She didn't know where it was because she'd never understood how it worked. And now she was trying to pilot a ship she didn't know how to steer. Instead of replying, I turned my attention to the backup protocol I had initiated the night before. Not to steal, not to hoard, just to document. Every system, every integration, every cost-saving flow I'd built. Not for revenge, but for clarity, for proof, for when the dust settled and someone inevitably came looking for answers. I created a full offline archive of my contributions, 3 years of process designs, 6 optimized project frameworks, documentation of every measurable outcome tied to the systems I introduced. It wasn't petty, it was protection. It was evidence that the foundation they were standing on had a name. Mine. And then, 2 days before my last day, it happened. A flagged email hit my inbox, copied on a client thread by accident. It was a $1.5 million enterprise contract renewal with one of our top clients, and something had gone wrong. Tina had ignored a risk flag I'd coded into the platform, a red marker signaling a missing compliance verification. The system caught it. Tina didn't. Now the client was furious. Legal had been looped in. And Tina? She blamed the tool. In a Slack channel full of managers, she wrote, "Looks like there were blind spots in the previous process. I'm already working on building something more streamlined." I read it twice, jaw locked, blood hot under my skin. Blind spots? She was standing on top of a system that had saved the company close to $2 million over 3 fiscal years, and now she was not only fumbling it, she was rewriting the narrative to suit herself. I wanted to shout, to type back a list of hard facts, of metrics, of receipts, but I didn't. Instead, I opened a new folder. Dropped in the email thread, the internal workflow logs, the original flag trigger code. Let her hang herself with her own shortcuts. I walked to the break room for tea. Kept my posture even, my tone neutral. A few coworkers glanced over but said nothing. The place already felt like someone else's, shallow, rushed, and built on borrowed time. Tina strutted past me that afternoon, talking loudly on the phone to a vendor she could barely pronounce. I watched her for a moment. The cracks beneath her heels were spreading. I smiled faintly, quietly sipping my tea, because she had no idea what was coming. But I did, and I wouldn't need to lift a finger. 8 months ago, I mailed in a patent application. No team, no budget, no fanfare. Just me, a sealed envelope, and a quiet belief that the system I'd built, Pulse Logic, was worth protecting. I filed it under my own name, from my kitchen table. After yet another late night cleaning up someone else's mess, and now, it had come full circle. The envelope arrived early Wednesday morning, wedged between junk mail and a utilities notice. But the moment I saw the embossed seal, my breath caught. I tore it open slowly, hands steady but heart pounding. Patent approved. There it was in ink. My name, my system, my legacy. Pulse. Logic had already been piloted with 2 mid-sized clients through quiet partnerships I'd arranged outside of Vanguard. Fully separate, fully compliant. The results were clear. Project cycle time reduced by 32%, cross-functional misfires down 40%, and retention rates up across the board. It wasn't theoretical anymore. It worked. It sealed. And it worked because I understood how teams failed and what they needed to thrive. Not politically, but functionally. I thought that would be the peak of the week. But that afternoon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar area code. Ellis Hart? Yes. This is Armand Leclerc, CEO of Quanta Edge Innovations. I'd like to meet tomorrow. If you're available, Quanta Edge, Vanguard's biggest regional competitor. Faster, leaner, smarter. They weren't known for bureaucracy. They were known for results. I walked into their Austin headquarters the next day. No receptionist desk chatter, no branding fluff, just quiet competence. I was escorted upstairs, past floor-to-ceiling windows and focused teams. When I entered the conference room, Armand stood, shook my hand firmly, and slid a folder across the table. Inside, a proposal, title, Partner and Chief Technology Officer. Terms, equity, autonomy, full rollout of Pulse Logic, backed by Quanta's infrastructure and scale. He leaned back, calm, intentional. You built this without a team, without funding, and you made it work. That's not just innovation, that's execution. We're not offering you a job, we're offering you a platform. I didn't speak right away, because for the first time, I didn't have to fight to be understood. He wasn't looking for charisma. He wasn't impressed by presence. He saw the system, the numbers, the proof. He saw me. I reached for the pen, slow but certain. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about leaving anymore. It was about arriving at the exact place I was meant to be all along. It was my second to last day when Nathan finally asked to see me. His message came through Slack, curt and impersonal. Ellis, do you have 5 minutes? My office. I took a deep breath, smoothed my blouse, and walked toward the glass-walled corner that had once felt so far above me. When I stepped inside, Nathan was standing behind his desk, gripping the printed copy of my resignation packet like it might catch fire. His eyes flicked up, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked shaken. He started, then cleared his throat. I read through your attachment, so he finally read something I wrote. The attachment, of course, was not just a letter of resignation. On page 2, I'd included a concise report outlining Pulse Logic, its function, measurable impacts, and third-party pilot results. Clean, direct, irrefutable. Nathan looked pale. This software, he said slowly, tapping the document with the back of his hand. You built this while working here? Yes, I said, voice steady. But not with company resources, not on company time. All mine. His fingers curled slightly. Why didn't you ever bring it forward? I almost laughed. I did, I said, calm as stone. 3 times. He blinked. In 2021 Q1 Strategy Summit, you redirected the presentation after 5 minutes. In 2022, post-mortem on the Turner project, I sent you a full breakdown and roadmap. You replied, quote, not aligned with culture objectives, and last year, I submitted a full proposal during Q4 planning. You wrote, interesting but lacks cultural resonance. Nathan winced like I'd read his own emails back to him in public. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. I didn't need to. Ellis, he said carefully, we didn't realize the scope of what you were building. Honestly, it's impressive. And it's clear we've undervalued your contributions. I nodded once, silent. He looked at me for a long moment before finally saying what he'd been holding in. We'd like to counteroffer. I've spoken to senior leadership. We can create a new role, Senior VP of Operational Strategy. Better salary. Full autonomy to develop Pulse Logic here. Inside Vanguard, you don't have to walk away from what you started. There it was, the panic beneath the polish. I looked out the window behind him, where the skyline shimmered against the late afternoon haze. I'm not leaving because you didn't promote me, I said quietly. I'm leaving because you never saw what was right in front of you. He opened his mouth. I didn't give him the chance. You chose charm over results, optics over substance. You wanted bright energy, and I gave you systems. You wanted easy. I gave you outcomes. And now that the outcomes are walking out the door, suddenly they matter. Nathan sat down, deflated. We made a mistake, he said. You made 3. I corrected gently. There was a long silence. Then I stood, straightened my blazer, and turned toward the door. Good luck rebuilding what you didn't bother to understand. And with that, I walked out, not triumphant, not smug, just clear. Because sometimes clarity doesn't roar. It just walks away and lets the silence do the rest. I left Vanguard on a Friday afternoon, No farewell speech. No email blast. No cake in the break room with cheap paper plates and forced small talk. Just me, my tote bag, and the quiet sound of an elevator descending 32 floors. No one followed me out. No one tried to stop me. And that silence? It told me everything I needed to know. The following Monday, I walked into the lobby of Quanta Edge Innovations. Same city, different gravity. No noise, no pretenses. Just the quiet rhythm of a company that didn't need to shout to prove it was alive. "Ms. Hart?" the receptionist asked, already smiling. "They're ready for you upstairs." I followed the assistant through bright, open corridors. Natural light spilled across polished floors, softening even the sharpest lines of metal and glass. At the end of the hall was my new office. Corner view. Minimalist desk. No clutter. And a black nameplate that said it all. Ellis Hart Partner. Strategy and Systems Innovation. For a long moment, I stood still, just looking. This wasn't just a room. It was validation made physical. Waiting inside was my new team, 6 people, engineers, designers, systems thinkers, not handpicked to manage me, handpicked to build with me. They weren't here to test my vision. They were here because of it. "Welcome to day 1, said Caleb, the lead systems architect. "We've already reviewed Pulse Logic's pilot specs. Ready when you are." I nodded, barely trusting myself to speak. Minutes later, we gathered in Quanta's sunlit forum for an all-hands meeting. Armand Leclerc, CEO, stood at the front. He didn't bring slides, didn't list my credentials. He brought a story. She didn't climb the ladder. He began. She built her own staircase, quietly. While others focused on visibility, she focused on value. And when others failed to see her, she kept building until they couldn't look away. My throat tightened. "This isn't a welcome," Armand continued. "It's a recognition of someone whose work has already changed how teams operate, of someone who belongs at the center of innovation, not the sidelines." He paused, eyes meeting mine. "Ellis Hart isn't joining us to fit in. She's joining us to lead." The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was clean, earned, sincere. I stood, slowly, deliberately, not to claim space, but to acknowledge that. For the first time, I didn't have to. I wasn't proving anything anymore. They already knew. And finally, I was exactly where I was meant to be. 3 months had passed since I walked out of Vanguard for the last time. Most days. I didn't think about them. I had no reason to. My schedule was full. Strategy workshops, platform rollout phases, licensing discussions. Pulse Logic was scaling faster than we'd projected. Quanta had already signed 2 Fortune 100 companies to multi-year agreements. My name was now attached to systems used in boardrooms I'd once been locked out of. Then, one morning, an unexpected ping. Tariq Henderson, former marketing director at Vanguard. Just 2 words. Check the news. I clicked the link without thinking. It took me to the homepage of Austin Business Journal. Front and center, Vanguard Strategies loses 30% of clients after Q2 systems breakdown. The subheadlines painted a picture I didn't need help imagining. Delayed product rollouts, missed contractual milestones, 3 enterprise clients walk away. Internal teams cite untraceable workflows and absence of logic continuity. But it was the quote in bold that stopped me cold. "We once trusted their systems like they were bulletproof. Now it feels like no one knows how anything actually works." Thomas Kwan, CEO of Terra Nova Solutions. I leaned back in my chair. Heartbeat steady. That system he referred to? That was mine. And now, it was gone, stripped, mismanaged, mishandled, because they handed it off to someone who thought charisma could replace comprehension. A second message appeared, this time from Liam. "She's melting down in the break room. Tina. She can't access the primary dashboard." It says half the back-end logic is corrupted. No one knows how to fix it. I stared at the screen, not smiling, but not blinking either. Liam added, "We had a meeting this morning with a client. She told them, we're reinventing the system." They walked out halfway through. No denial, no anger, just inevitability. Vanguard had built an empire on appearance, and now that empire was toppling, one missing module, one vanished client, one harmless promotion at a time. There was no need for me to respond. No need to say, "I told you so." Reality was already louder than any revenge could be. I closed the article, shut my laptop, and looked out at the skyline from my office window. Sunlight spilled across the surface of my desk. Somewhere, Tina was likely scrambling, Nathan was backpedaling, and the board was spinning in circles, trying to diagnose a disease they had actively ignored for years. But I was building forward. No debris, no noise, just direction, and that was the difference. Vanguard had mistaken stillness for silence, but I hadn't been silent. I'd just been preparing. Now the foundation they once dismissed had become the one they desperately needed. Too bad they destroyed it before they learned how it worked. It came on a Wednesday. A quiet ping while I was reviewing licensing paperwork for 3 global clients. The email subject line read simply, "Apology," from Nathan Cho. I hesitated before opening it. Not out of fear, just curiosity. The kind you feel when returning to a house you've long since moved out of, unsure of what, if anything, is still standing. Inside, the message was short. No small talk, no dressing up. Ellis. I've been meaning to write this since the board meeting last week. They finally saw it. Everything you tried to show us years ago. They know what we lost. I know. You were right. About Pulse Logic. About the team. About Tina. I've stepped down. So has she. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Nathan. I sat back in my chair. No emotion stirred. No vindication. No heat. Just quiet. Like watching the last ember of a fire burn out from across the street. I glanced across my office. On the far wall, sunlight touched the glass frame holding my patent certificate. Pulse Logic. Registered and approved. Beside it was a folder marked confidential. Negotiation docs from 3 enterprise clients. Japan, Germany, Toronto. Each preparing to roll out my system at global scale. And just above that, on the highest shelf, sat the frame, not the patent, not the press feature, a quote. Black font, brush steel. "You're too focused on outcomes." Nathan Cho, 2022. He meant it as criticism. I had it engraved. Because that sentence didn't wound me, it clarified me. I stood up and crossed the room, adjusting the angle of the frame. For a long time, I thought closure looked like revenge, like proving people wrong so publicly they'd never doubt you again, but it's not. Closure is reading a message like Nathan's and feeling nothing break, nothing ache, nothing left to fix. He'd stepped down. Tina was gone. The system they dismissed had become the one 3 multinational boards were now depending on, and I didn't have to throw a single stone. I returned to my desk, reread the final line of his email. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner," and whispered to no one. I'm not, because if he had seen it sooner, I might have stayed, and I was never meant to stay in a place that needed a collapse to value contribution. I clicked reply, typed 2 lines, and hit send. "Thank you for your message. I wish you well in what comes next." Then I leaned back, took a deep breath, and smiled, not with victory, but release. Because the past was no longer my anchor. And the future? It was already mine. The room was full, not with people looking to impress or compete, but with engineers, analysts, and designers who had come to build something better. They weren't here for applause. They were here because they believed in the work, in the system, in what we were doing together. I stood at the front of the conference hall, sunlight tracing lines across the floor, and let the moment breathe. Then I spoke. 3 years ago, I built Pulse Logic alone, not because I didn't want help, but because no one wanted to believe it mattered. I paused, letting that land, not as bitterness, but as truth. Now, it's not just mine, it's ours. And what we're building here, it's not just a system, it's a standard, one grounded in clarity, contribution, and courage. Heads nodded across the room, quiet understanding passed between us. No slogans, no bravado. Just people who were tired of being overlooked for being the quiet ones who get things done. I closed with one truth I wish I had heard years earlier. Don't ever let someone else define your worth. If they can't see it, that's their limitation, not yours. The room stayed still for a beat longer, not from hesitation, but from resonance. That evening, as I drove home, the Austin skyline glowed gold against the darkening sky. My route took me past my old office building, Vanguard Strategies. The lights on the top floor were off. The company's logo, once bold across the glass, now faded. And on the 4th floor, a large red banner, for lease. I didn't feel satisfaction, just stillness, the kind that comes from knowing you didn't need to tear anything down to rise. You just had to walk away and let the truth settle where it belonged. A notification blinked on my dash. Liam, they're asking if you'd consider coming back. The board wants to offer you the CEO role. Do I tell them? I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back slowly. Tell them. I'm building something I never found there. Real respect. Because I wasn't here to rewrite old chapters. I was here to author new ones. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told you were too much for simply doing your job well, this story is for you. Drop a comment if any part of Ellis's journey felt like your own. Share this with someone who needs the reminder. And don't forget to subscribe, because we're not done building. We're just getting started.